So we are here on another edition of Unfiltered Founders. A little bit of a different look for Adam and I. We're virtual. We have some filming coming up, where we're going to be back having some drinks with some very special guests. But Adam and I wanted to catch up and keep the momentum rolling here. And sometimes you have to pivot. You have to pivot to get things done, and that's actually the theme of what we have going on here, where the schedules don't align and we couldn't get together to film the way that we wanted to. And we had to pivot. And this is a prime example of that, right? Where we had to change our format a little bit, but we want to keep sharing our stories with everybody. And we want to keep sharing our experiences and have those good discussions that we can put out to y'all and share. That's ultimately the goal of Unfiltered Founders.
Yeah, and there's a really good quote, and I don't remember who it's from. I want to say Eisenhower, but like your best laid battle plans are all great until that first bullet flies,
True
and then
story.
everything goes out the window, right? Or I think the quote is it all goes to shit. But
I mean, the gist is there. The gist of
yeah,
the quote
and
is there. Yeah.
that's kind of the thing with business, right? So like you set up your plans, you're like, this is what we're gonna do, and then you make your first cookie, or you add the first shirts to the window, or whatever your business is gonna be. As soon as that happens, you need to be flexible. You need to make sure that you're ready for the crazy stuff that's going to come at you. And, you have to be prepared to pivot and turn and maybe completely change your idea. Right. And that's what we're doing right now. We'd rather be together doing stuff, but life happens and you can't stop doing what you're passionate about just because that happens.
No, and I think, you and I found we were still having these discussions, and we talk regularly and we're on calls regularly. And it was one of those that we said, like, look, we're still having these discussions, but we're not filming them, and we're waiting for filming dates. And FYI, we're all from the hockey community. So there's a big hockey season kick starting here, and our videographer is from the hockey community. So, we had to say to ourselves, look, do we want to wait, or do we want to keep on going here? And I think the goal is to keep going. But I think, obviously, I mean, that's an example for us right here. But I think that, what Adam is, what you're saying, right, is pointed towards the idea that a lot of businesses start, and the idea that they start with is not what they end up with in any way, shape, or form. It may be in the field, it may be in the gist of what they wanted to do, but it's not, how things always end up. It's not a perfect just, hey, this is my product and this is what I do, or this is my service and this is what I do. And that's what exists for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that narrative most certainly hits home to me, in terms of my personal experience. The first company that I started was, Kremer's Community Kitchen, which was Kremer's Cafe and Catering originally. And we were doing pharmaceutical lunches and we were doing weddings. And all of a sudden, an institutional food service opportunity came, and we had an opportunity to do some meals for a nursing home that was renovating their kitchen, and that put the idea of, oh, what's this element of food service? You know, Very quickly we pivoted from pharmaceutical lunches and weddings to, we're an institutional food service provider, and we're catering lunches for daycare centers and senior centers and homeless shelters. And it completely changed the type of food that we served. And in that, I mean, that's now what we do, right? Thousands and thousands and thousands of meals a day. But we most certainly didn't start that way. It's not that I started the company saying, hey, we're going to start an offsite institutional food service company, and we're going to deliver meals up and down Eastern Pennsylvania. That wasn't even on the radar. But there's no regrets in terms of how that went down and our ability to adapt. And ultimately, all things happen for a reason, and we accepted the ability to pivot and the ability for change, and ran with it. And it's paid dividends, obviously, down the road.
Yeah, and there's a comedy thing that places like Second City and Saturday Night Live use, where it's a technique called yes and it's really the way that I've lived a lot of my life. Is you say yes and, right? It's not no but or yes but, it's yes and. Let me add something to that. So at one point when I was in my 20s, my brother worked at a lighting company just in the warehouse, and I needed some extra extra work. So I started working, there, and they needed somebody to fix chain motors, these big motors that they use pull truss up into the sky and they have lights on them. And, I didn't know anything about chain motors, but it's a motor, like I understand how an engine works. So they said, do you know how to do it? And I said, yes. And it would be great if somebody gave me the specifics for these particular motors. Right. So 2 days after I got that, like I took it home, I read it because again, it's about being proactive and doing stuff. And, you don't just hope. You read the instructions, you figure out how these motors work. They're pretty simple. This guy comes into the shop and he goes back and he's at the workbench next to me and we don't talk at all day. And he goes, you want lunch? I said, yes. And I'll drive. Right. So it's yes. And so he asked me to lunch. I'm going to, go the next step by driving. So at lunch, we don't talk. We just eat. We go back to the shop. At the end of the day, he goes, so do you have any interest in going out on tour? And I said, yes. And that's part of the reason that I'm here. I had no idea that this was an option, but I'm saying yes. And because it sounds cool. And yeah, of course I want to try that. I don't know anything about it. 2 days later, I'm out on tour because I said yes. Right. And I added something to it. Right. So somebody came to you and said, are you interested in doing institutional food stuff? Are you introducing catering? Said yes. And here's what I did. So when you're thinking about your business and you run into a difficulty, like, we can't get together because our lives are taking us in separate directions. You said, Adam, do you want to record a different way? And I said, yes. I'll do the editing so that, we can do it a little faster than, sending it to our regular video guy. So we can maybe get some things up quicker and, get ideas out, or even, dealing with difficulties, right? And explain that everybody runs into them. And, you just have to have the right mindset. Mindset is a key thing. It's a big, big key thing.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it a lot, and I think that, it's being adaptable, being resilient, finding ways to get things done and move things forward. And we talked a lot in our book club conversation about, that extra 5%, and how important it was to go that extra mile to be great. But that 95% matters, and you can't be stagnant. You can't not take steps forward. When you're building, you have to continue to move forward and be adaptable and be willing to pivot, right? And take a different approach. And so there's, most certainly the example for both of us that we have in terms of our careers. I mean, I have to ask you, I never knew actually how you went out on became a roadie for a while and all of that, and you're a man of many different hats in terms of your career path. But the children's book author approach. So when you started writing, did you say, hey, I want to be a children's book author? Or did you have like that big book idea that, I want to write a novel,
This is the perfect pivot. So I was going to write the next great American novel, and I probably still will write the idea at some point. It was going to be great. It was going to be, so there's an idea, a guy named Bruce Campbell has The Hero with 1,000 Faces. So our idea of what a hero is has been around for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then a woman named, I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but Mircea Eliade writes kind of how the history of religion, or like belief, more than religion, it's about beliefs. And it's her idea is that one day, way back in the past, somebody realized that the sun would come up every day. And they realized when. Like, found signs, like the crickets stopped chirping, or this happens or that happens. And they went out to their tribe and said, I can make the sun rise. And then went into this chant. And 30 minutes later, the sun was up. And now they've become the first cult leader in the world. So I was wondering what would happen if like that guy was that hero with 1,000 faces and had been around forever and had tried to do better and be better. So all these historical figures that we have throughout history, so Muhammad and Jesus and Moses and JFK or Martin Luther King, what if I took a string of those people and had that person always be that person, the hero with 1,000 faces? And then what happens if the Catholic Church finds out that this person exists, and it kind of debunks a lot of their ideas, and then they accidentally kill his best friend?
There it is. So how did you,
yeah.
Well, you can't give the book away, Adam. Don't give the book away.
I'm giving the whole thing away.
The whole thing. Go ahead.
So I'm not giving the ending away because I'm not telling what happens after that. That's like chapter 3. Like we're still at the beginning. of the whole thing. And someday, 20 years from now, this recording will be out there. But that was the book I was going to write. And I sat down to write and I did my research. So I read like all the writing books, like On Writing by Stephen King and like all these, the background books. And Stephen King says, don't force yourself to write what you want, just write what comes out, right? Don't force yourself to start the business that you think you want. Start the business that comes out of the work that you did, right? And what came out was a bunch of poems for kids. And that's how I got into writing children's books. Like, the idea was there for me to do this whole other thing, but I pivoted because that's not what was working. And I may get there, right? At some point, you might start that dream business that you had, but do the work first to make sure that it's going to be successful and that A, you have the skills to do that and that your skills aren't really good in a different area, right? I happened to be really good at figuring out ideas that would resonate for parents and kids. Not what I meant to do, but it's what I did and it's what I'm still doing, right? And I'm still working on developing the skills for that other thing, right? Don't lose that dream, right?
Yep.
I'm still working on getting better.
So what about the argument that, when you pivot like that, and I like how you phrase kind of, don't lose that dream, etc. But is that giving up on the dream? Is it, I'm not doing pharmaceutical lunches and I'm not doing weddings, and that's not the type of food service that I do anymore. I do institutional food service, right? And we always joke we're the glorified lunch ladies. I'm the best bald-headed lunch lady, sloppy
But
Joe.
did it,
Here's a
did
sloppy
you,
Joe. But is it what if somebody argues that the pivot is giving up on the dream? What if somebody argues that?
so it's not giving up on the dream. So my question to you is your passion about providing the food or is it about providing the food to people who sell and market pharmaceuticals, right? Like, is that what you were passionate about? Where you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to cook for pharmaceutical people? Or was it, I see a way to make cost effective meals for large groups that
Mhm.
taste well and are nutritious? Like, was that the passion? If that was the passion, then you're you're in the passion right now. For me, I'm not writing that novel, but I'm still passionate about figuring out how to do that. It's a whole different way. I literally had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I have another podcast that I do for my author thing called Picture This. And as part of that podcast, I was talking to a friend of mine and the author of the book she just illustrated. And I was talking about the arc for a picture book is fairly simple, right? 200, 400 words. I don't need a 13-step arc, right? I need a 3 to 5 step arc for writing a novel, which is at a minimum, right? If I'm writing middle grade, going to be 25 to 45,000 words. If I'm writing for YA or teens, it's going to be 60 to 80,000 words. That arc is necessarily going to be longer. So I have to learn the skills to extend my arc,
Mhm.
right? So I have the really good skills in the arc that I have, and that doesn't go away. It's about adapting to that dream, right? So if you really, really cared about selling to pharmaceutical people or getting into corporate food service, it's about extending the knowledge you have to target that other market and figuring out what are the core things that I need to be able to target them. Go back to the drawing board, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
you don't have to give up or you can choose to give up if you want to, but I certainly haven't.
no, and I think, I mean, that's what made me open to to that change in business, that pivot in business. Because ultimately, like, I'm not a chef. I can cook, but I'm not a chef, so I'm not sitting here attached to my have to sit here and do the 5-star meal and the delicate plate and all that other stuff. Like, that's not what it was about ever for me. I mean, I just, I went through college working in restaurants. I went through high school working in restaurants. I enjoyed being in the kitchen. I enjoyed the culture of it. I enjoyed the people. And at the time when I was young, I mean, I'd just come out of college. I'd worked a corporate job. I hated it. And I knew that I just didn't want to do that. And that, food service had been good to me and that I had the ability to start something that was mine. I think that, to your point, had I been super passionate about the type of food in the sense that I am a chef and this is what I must do, right? You know, I wouldn't have accepted that pivot. I would have stayed where I was at. I would have stayed in the lane and I would have looked for something different. But, you know, for me, it was very much so like that's not what it was about. It was about actually just enjoying being, you know, in the kitchen and around people and producing. And I was really able to attach myself to the element of production. It was starting to get into the high volume and solving, you know, how can we feed 1,000 people? How can we feed 2,000 people? How can we feed 3,000 and 4,000? Right. And, you know, in a single day, again and again and again, I was able to attach myself to that while still working in food and working in an industry that had treated me well. And even some of the best catering jobs that we had when we were still doing a lot of the catering, you know, we did a movie that was in the middle of a cornfield that we had to like get trucks out into the middle of the cornfield and we had to solve all like those were the best catering jobs. Like I loved that. And solving that much more was the focus than, you know, I have to make this 5-star meal and, you know, use the tweezers to get everything from point A, you know, to the plate, right? So, to your point, I think that, you know, I never viewed it that I gave up on the dream in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I have a company, you know, we employ tons of people. We have a good cause in terms of who we work with and the nonprofits that we work with, and something that I was able to be proud of and very much am proud of. So, you know, I don't think that in any way, shape, or form I gave up on it any more than you gave up on your great American novel. Right.
Yeah, and that dream can change. Like I happen to still have my same thing. Like I want to write a novel. Maybe it's not that novel, but I want to have a book that hurts when you drop it on your foot, right? Like I think, and not because it hits on the corner. Like that's just a goal that I have set for myself, right? And not that I need it to feel successful, but it's a goal that I set for myself, and I haven't changed from that. But maybe your goal, your end goal changed a little bit for you. And Dwayne Johnson was talking about his new movie that he's got out, where he had been chasing kind of like the blockbuster, right? And when you're doing that, it's always about how much money you're making. And did your movie make enough money? Did it do this? And that's the only way to tell if you were successful in these blockbuster films. And it's a bit of a hamster wheel, right? And he had set this goal for himself, or these goals for himself, that weren't making him happy.
Mm,
And he had to rethink that and think about what, you know, I still want to be in this industry. I still want to make movies because I'm loving it. I'm passionate about it. I really care about my team. But what is it inside of that hits the core metrics that I set for myself for success? And it became about making something that was much, much smaller by, you know, at least 1 0, if not 2 zeros in how much money it was going to make, right? And for him, The Smashing Machine, which is the name of the movie, Free Press, became about just the passion for telling a story, right? And that involved him kind of reanalyzing what his dreams and goals were. So did he give up? Like, is that quitting for him? Is that giving up on the dream? Like, because we as people are like, oh, that movie didn't make $400,000. You know, well, that movie, you know, didn't make $400 million,
yep. Well,
right?
and it's to your point, I mean, that's actually he's done that a couple times in his career because he played his high school football, you know, a mile and a half from where I sit right now in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And, you know, he went to the University of Miami with the intention of being a pro football player, right? Which
Yep.
obviously is not what ended up happening, right? And he ended up then, you know, pivoting and going into the family business, which was wrestling, and then that wrestling then turned into another career, right? So I don't, you know, I think that, you know, he's a great example, local example for us, too, from where we sit of kind of what we're talking about. You know, I don't think that in any way, shape, or form when he was playing football here in Bethlehem as a high schooler that he had even remotely on his radar. There it is. You might be the next movie star, dude. You could be like the senior citizen
Yeah.
Superman with the twirl.
This is
It's like
this is the whole thing with the hair. It's
speaking
different. Talk about a
speaking of
pivot.
pivots,
Oh
yeah.
my
Speaking of
God.
pivots, it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's
There you
crazy.
go. It's reinventing myself for my next career.
Yeah, I mean,
Movie
if
star.
I could give myself a new haircut to reinvent myself, I would. So I'm a little jealous, but I'm
If I
sorry.
didn't donate it to the kids, I would have donated it to you.
It's I dude.
So to sum up here, we made a big pivot. The good news is we're really going to lean into our hockey roots with the next couple of people we're going to talk about, and tell some really really fun and interesting stories. And like that, when we get together for videos, those are going to be the stories we hit. But we'll do maybe a couple of these leading up to that. If anybody has ideas or things that they want to hear about, if you're having trouble with something, let us know. Maybe we'll do a special one because it's a little easier for us to do a video this way. Not necessarily as much fun. Next time we're gonna have to have some beverages.
Yeah.
That's what we're missing. We'll have some beverages. We'll spice it up with it.
We need to
Work in
film we need to film
work
it
in
like
progress.
3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and not, 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning.
That's it. I'm in. Do some late night. We'll do 10:30, 11 after you get off the ice.
There we
A
go.
little end of day beverage, and yeah,
Or a Sunday morning,
have
like a
fun.
Sunday morning bloody, like, we could have a Sunday morning Bloody Mary,
Sunday
Uh,
morning bloodies, heading into some football games. I'm in.
yeah,
I'm in.
we're all in on that. We're all in on that. Message to everybody, be flexible, stay resilient, stay adaptable, and more than anything, don't ever feel that the pivot or the change is giving up on your dream. It's not by any means. Sometimes it's just accepting it and saying, "Listen, there's a reason it's here," and saying yes and can go a long way.
Yeah, it might be the thing that pushes you over the top, right? And it doesn't have to be a full pivot. It could just be a tiny little thing, tiny little change, right? And that takes you over the top.
And have lunch with the quiet guy. That's the other message from this too.
Yeah,
Have lunch with the
have
quiet guy.
lunch with the quiet guy.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.